Chapter 15. If I'd thought people had talked about the photo a few weeks ago, it was nothing compared to all the talk now. Lee bumped his shoulder against mine, letting me know he was there, as I ducked my head and made my way over to where the guys were hanging out by Warren's car. Levi gave me an encouraging smile, and the guys looked at each other like they didn't know whether to ask me all about it or leave me be and get the details off Lee later. Levi already knew everything, of course. After working on my college application essay for an hour the day before, I had enough and called him. "Let me guess," he said. "You are babysitting and want some company?" "I broke up with Noah." He was quiet for a while. Then, "How are you holding up?" "You don't want to know all the gory details?" I asked instead, thinking of the various texts and social messages I'd had from some of the girls at school, eager for the gossip, asking what had happened. They'd seen I'd changed my profile picture. What did it mean? "You can tell me if you want," Levi told me, "but you don't have to." It was oddly comforting response. "I'm not okay, but I will be, I think." "You will be," he said assertively. "I was a mess for weeks after the breakup with Julie, and look at me now." "Oh God," I deadpanned. "I'm doomed." Levi laughed and, rather than being offended, said cheerfully, "See? You are already cracking jokes." "I think he's seeing someone else," I told Levi, my voice little more than a whisper. Like saying it louder would make it true. I explained about the phone call, how he was hiding something from me, how we'd argued about Amanda, and how he'd defended her. "Defended her?" he interrupted me to ask. "I said she was a bitch, and he said she wasn't. It was a big deal," I snapped, firm, when I realized how petty that came out. Glad when he didn't tell me how stupid that sounded, I carried on until... "Wait, so you broke up with him?" "Why is everyone so shocked about that?" I sighed, testily. "Seriously, was Noah really in a league that far above me that it was such a shocking notion that I'd been the one to instigate the breakup, and not the other way around? If people keep saying that to me in school on Monday, I thought I'm gonna scream." Talking it through with Levi helped, and was so emotionally draining. I wanted to spin a slightly different story in school. One that hopefully would involve a lot fewer questions and a lot less gossip. "The whole long distance thing just wasn't working out for us," I said calmly to the guys in the parking lot before we went into homeroom on Monday morning, when Cam cautiously broached the subject and asked what had happened. And word spread pretty quickly. Even so, the rumors were flying around just like the photo incident. "Did you hear? He caught her with Levi." "Yeah, from English class. I know, right? She's such a slut. Totally deserves it for screwing around on him. Or, screwing someone else. She found out that he's been boning that blonde chick from the photo. You remember the photo, right? Behind her back? He's such an asshole. How could he do that to her? I bet she's heartbroken." "I told you it wasn't gonna work out. These things never do. Not that long distance. Hey, you think I should give her my number? Now she's single again. Well, my cousin was on the football team with Noah last year, and he said they've been on the rocks since Noah went to college. I mean, he can do so much better than Al Evans." I gripped my teeth as the rumors carried on spreading around me. It made me feel 2 inches tall and vulnerable. It felt like they were tearing my personal life apart at the seams, just for kicks, and I hated it. I'd never been gossiped about so maliciously before. The day felt endless, especially when Lee kept a little distance from me. At my own instance, Rachel was sympathetic about the breakup, but it was clear when she hugged me that she still held it against me that Lee and had run out on her on Saturday. I felt shitty enough already, without completely destroying the relationship too. I stuck with Levi as much as I could instead, although that only seemed to make the rumors worse. It was exhausting. Now, the glare of the cell phone screen was giving me a headache. I rubbed my eyes again and yawned. It was past 12, and despite it all, I was still awake. When I'd climbed into bed over an hour ago, I'd picked up my cell to check my notifications and, like every night, to check my texts from Noah. We never went more than a couple of hours without talking. We always texted each other good night, even if we were in different time zones. We hadn't spoken in 2 days. Now my eyes were filling with tears again, and I pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes and willed myself not to break down again. This was my decision. This was my choice, I reminded myself. I mean, I'd been the one getting hurt. I was the one who couldn't handle him hiding things from me. I was the one who decided we should break up. This was all for the best, ultimately. It had to be. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I fell asleep. You look like shit, Levi told me on the way out of homeroom a couple days later. I'd spent the whole time reading the text for English Lit, trying to ignore him and Lee so they wouldn't ask me how I was doing after the breakup and tell me I looked like shit. Rachel was still a little cool toward me, and Lisa had clearly picked her side. It was not mine. I glared at him. Don't even go there. Sorry. You look... He bit his lip, trying to think of a different word. Something a little less harsh, and a little less true. I knew I looked like shit. I had huge bags under my eyes from another night of not being able to sleep. I had some pretty horrendous zits, probably from all the stressing out and getting upset. My hair wasn't doing anything right today, and even though I'd put it in a ponytail, there were strands frizzing around my face, and I was pretty sure the scowl on my face was semi-permanent. You can stop trying to not offend me, I told Levi. I know I look like shit. I just don't need you to remind me. His expression turned wounded. I'm sorry. I sighed. Whatever. Look, I'm not in the mood for anything today, okay? Is this to do with Noah? Sort of. Only sort of. What's up? Will you leave me alone already? I snapped so loudly that a few heads turned our way. A couple of people started whispering. Great. I bet that'll set the rumor mill going again. God, why did everything have to be so stressful in high school? Screw being the best times of our lives. This was hell. I tried to ignore it, but it was hard to block the judgy looks and whispered comments out completely. And it was really getting me down. Couldn't everyone just mind their own goddamn business already? Why did they have to keep talking about mine? I couldn't even walk down the corridor with Levi without people looking at us like they were waiting for us to launch into a crazy makeout session right there in the hallway. It was just making me so mad. And with everyone talking more and more about colleges and asking for second and third and fourth opinions on their application essays, I only seemed to be falling further and further behind. Lee had mentioned Brown a couple more times to me, and I knew I had to work that much harder if I wanted to get in there. But after the events of the weekend, I got the feeling Rachel would never forgive either of us if I rocked up at Brown with a pair of them. And it wasn't like I could talk to Lee about it. He was spending all his time with the football team lately, while Rachel was busy with drama club rehearsals, and they were still patching things up. If I asked him about college again, it'd just be another rift in their relationship because of me. I knew how much Rachel meant to Lee. I didn't want to be a burden. Right now, though, I felt like I could scream or cry, maybe both. Elle, you okay? I'm fine, I snapped. God, Levi, why don't you find somebody else to follow around like a lost puppy for a change? I regretted it as soon as I said it. I had a flashback to John Fletcher's party a while back, when Lee had said more or less the same thing to me, and how upset it had made me. I didn't mean it. I just needed to vent somehow, and Levi was just there. We'd both stopped walking, and I stared at the hurt look on his face for a fraction of a second. Then I turned on my heel and stormed away before I could feel any worse about myself than I did right then. I was starting to understand why Noah felt like punching walls and doors and lockers sometimes. In our next class, I pretended not to even notice when Levi took a seat at the other end of the classroom instead of his usual one next to me. And when the bell rang, he left class first and didn't wait for me. First Noah, then Lee, and now Levi. Was I going to push away every guy in my life that I cared about? When lunch finally rolled around, I went to buy a sandwich and looked over at our lunch table. There was Lee, sitting with his arm around Rachel. She was laughing at something Dixon had said, and Lee was talking over her head to Cam and Levi, and two of Rachel's friends sat at the table too. Roran and Oliver took a seat then, and they all stopped their conversations to say hi to them. Lisa sat down with her bagged lunch as I watched. I stood watching them for a moment, wondering if they were waiting for me. Maybe they hadn't even noticed I wasn't there with them. I stepped up to pay for my sandwich, and then stood looking around the rest of the cafeteria. There were so many people I would normally be happy to sit with and talk to, but none I felt like I could confide in, the way I would with Lee, or Cam, or Dixon, or Levi. A few people looked my way and then turned to talk to their friends. They probably weren't talking about me, but what if they were? They'd been talking about me all week, so why stop now? Why wouldn't they talk about me when I was standing here clutching my tuna sandwich and looking like a lost, lonely freshman on my first day? I looked back at my friends at our lunch table, willing one of them to look over and see me, wave and gesture for me to hurry up already, to come sit with them. They didn't. Rationally, I knew they just hadn't noticed me yet. The same way I knew people probably weren't talking about me, because the reality was that I was throwing myself a huge pity party. But it's hard to be rational when it feels like you are drowning. I took a few shallow breaths, tossed my sandwich in the nearest trash can, and walked back out of the cafeteria. Lee smiled easily at me as I dragged my feet over to where he'd parked his car this morning. Hey. Hi. I got in the car and shut the door, waiting for him to get in too. He did, after what felt like 5 minutes waiting for him, and he frowned across at me. What's up with you today? You didn't show up to lunch. Didn't talk to me in class. Levi said you yelled at him. Lee, can we just go home, please? There must have been something in my tone or my face that made him decide to give up trying, because he shook his head at me, sighing through his nose, totally exasperated, and threw the car into gear before pulling out of the parking lot. The drive home was silent. I wasn't in the mood to talk. I wasn't in the mood for anything. I was overtired. I kept lying awake and playing back my last conversation with Noah, and all the times I thought he'd been hiding something from me, how I should have known something was going on. It made it impossible to concentrate, which only made me more stressed about the schoolwork I knew I needed to be focusing on. I was upset and wanted a hug, but I was so mad about everything and at everyone that I didn't want to even give them the chance to ask me what was wrong. Lee knew something was up. He was my best friend, after all. He stopped the car a few blocks away from both our houses. Right. What the hell is going on with you lately? I knew the breakup was tough on you, but let's face it, you were the one who broke up with him, and I thought we agreed it was for the best if he's keeping secrets from you and might have something going on with that Amanda chick. And I know you loved him, but you can't take it out on us. It's not about Noah, okay? Jesus. Then why are you acting like this? I huffed, sucking my cheeks in. I'm just all over the place, and I'm stressed out. Then you should talk to me. You should tell me these things. I know you said I needed to spend some quality time with Rachel this week, but... Lee, if you don't tell me what's wrong, I can't help. I want to help. And I don't want to cause more problems for you and Rachel. You don't need to look after me 24/7. I'm just not having a great week, okay? Everyone gossiping and talking about college, and it's just getting to me. It's all just getting a little too much to handle. So tell me what I can do. I don't know. I just... You what? You want to be alone for a while? Do you want me to ask Rachel if she'll tutor you? If you are struggling with your grades? His voice was gentler now, and his mouth was twisted to one side with sympathy. I reached up and grabbed at the roots of my hair. I didn't know what I wanted or what I needed. That was the problem. Things are just weird for me right now. I need you to understand that. I need you to be normal, and I need everyone to stop asking me how I'm feeling. Because the truth is, I'm not doing so hot, and... I trailed off, running out of steam, a lump in my throat, and I hated myself for getting so emotional and so worked up this easily. I just wanted things to be okay, like they had been a few weeks ago. I heard Lee sigh. He tapped on the dashboard agitatedly. Then Lee said, "Want to come around and play video games and order Chinese? We can invite the guys too. I was supposed to catch up with some of the football guys, but I can bail. We'll take a night off. We'll both stop thinking about homework and essays and college and grades and studying for a night. Yeah? How about that?" It sounded perfect. I felt a rush of gratitude toward my best friend. How was he so good at knowing what I needed before I did? What about Rachel? He shrugged. She said she was going to see a movie with some of the girls tonight anyway. It's a win-win. I tried not to be hurt that I hadn't received an invite. The girls had been including me more and more in things over the last couple of months, but that had changed suddenly in the last few days. I'd probably hate me if I were Rachel, so I couldn't really blame her for still being off with me. And you promise you are going to be normal and get off my back, asking me if I'm okay all the time. He held up his hand. Scout's honor. It made a nice change having a night with the guys like this. We hadn't done that in a while. Most of the time over the summer, when we'd hung out, there were boyfriends and girlfriends around, too. It had been good, but it was nice to feel like things were back to how they were last year, just for a night. We separated our food out in the kitchen, and everyone took their plates away into the living room until just me and Levi picking out our orders from the plastic bags. Hey, he said quietly. I was glad he'd talked first. It was a weight off my shoulder, off my chest I hadn't realized was really there. It was a little easier to breathe. In response, I said, I'm sorry about earlier. I didn't mean to yell at you like that. It's okay. You've got a lot going on. He smiled at me, his face open and sincere, and I beamed back. Over dinner, Cam brought up the subject of the Sadie Hawkins dance, which felt like he'd just dumped a bucket of ice water over me. I'd been so focused on asking Noah and him rejecting me that the concept of actually going to the dance in the next couple of weeks suddenly hit me. I'd have to ask someone else to do the dance. Or, actually, I could just go alone. I could do that. I could also not go at all. But I'd been excited about the dance. I wasn't about to let Noah ruin a night with my friends just because he rejected me and we'd broken up. My resolve hardened. I'd go to that dance, and I'd make sure there were plenty of pictures on my Instagram for the night showing just how much fun I had had. Cam was busy complaining about how Lisa wanted him to get a tie to match her dress, but how she'd insisted it had to be perfect, an exact match. The theme was red and pink. It was supposed to be cute and flirty and full of romance. Not that the night was going to be very romantic for me anymore, but I was happy we'd gone with that theme. Simple, and more importantly for the school council budget, cheap. Speaking of Sadie Hawkins, Lee said, who's everyone actually going with? Cassidy Thomas, Warren said. She's in my geography class. She left a note in my locker asking me to go. There were puns involved. I couldn't say no. She's kind of cute, Dixon said. Big nose, bad taste in guys. Too, obviously. Warren laughed. Oily piped... Ollie piped up next, saying, Caitlin asked me. I think it's just because she lives a block away from me, so it's easy to get home. But she's nice. Oh yeah, she did tell me she'd asked you, I said, recalling the school council meeting we'd had where a couple of the girls had been discussing their dates and the guys they wanted to ask. What about you? Cam asked Dixon. Someone's asked you, right? Dixon, to my surprise, started blushing. Actually, I asked someone. But it's Sadie Hawkins, I said. The girls asked the guys. That's kind of the thing, he stammered, looking down at his plate of sweet and sour chicken and noodles. His cheeks went even redder. I asked Danny a couple of weeks ago. Danny who? Danny Sharder? No, Danny Brown, from the basketball team. Several seconds passed in silence as we all let that sink in. I could see the guys exchanging looks that said, "Dixon's going to the dance of a guy? What? Wait. How did none of us know about this? Did he think he couldn't talk to us?" I hoped my face didn't look like that, too, since Dixon glanced up at me then. And I smiled and said, "The most important question here, Dixon, is what color ties are you two gonna be wearing? Please tell me you are gonna match." He smiled back at me, obviously relieved, and said, "Red, I think." Then Cam pitched in a voice that sounded totally disbelieving. "Sorry, but Danny Brown?" Dixon's lips twitched. "Look, I'm sorry I didn't tell you, or any of you guys, but, it's okay and..." No, Cam said. "I don't give a shit if you were bi or gay or whatever label you prefer. But my point is, Dixon, that Danny Brown is not a fine piece of ass. You can do a lot better than that. You should have asked Joe Drake. He's into guys and he hasn't got a date yet." Dixon snorted. "It's too late now," Cam said, shaking his head and pressing his lips into a disapproving line. "He's a nice guy," Dixon argued, but he was smiling. "He's funny." "Hey," Warren said, leaning over to shove Cam's shoulder. "I don't know why you are laughing. God knows what Lisa sees in you again. Not a fine piece of ass. And you are not even funny. What have you got going for you?" "I can do that trick where you tip a glass of water upside down without spilling it. The ladies love it. What can I say?" "It's true. I joke," looking at Warren with a deadpan expression. I put a hand to my chest. I think my heart just skipped a beat thinking about it. "How about you, Elle?" Dixon said then, still looking obviously relieved that none of us had made a big deal about him asking a guy to the dance. "Don't try and change the subject. The dance is, 2 weeks away." Levi caught my eye and said pointedly, I need a new suit jacket. You guys got any recommendations for where to go?" Ignoring him, Ollie said, "Yeah, come on, Elle. You are single now. You could, have your pick of guys. We can come up with someone for you to ask now that you definitely won't be going with no..." "Ow!" He broke off to scowl at Lee, who just elbowed him. I was grateful for Lee and Levi trying to intervene and spare my feelings, but said I'd figured I'd just go with you guys. Go stag. Or doe, I guess. Is that a thing? Going doe? I'm definitely making that a thing. A few of them laughed. Then Ollie piped up again with, "Hey, Levi, you don't have a date either, though, do you?" He shook his head. No, actually." I pulled a face at him, my eyes bugging. "Wait, what?" "I've seen at least 5 girls ask you to the dance." He shrugged. I figured it was easier to turn them down than try to explain I wasn't really looking for a date. I'm cool with not going, or just going with you guys. Lee caught my eye, his mouth pulling, and eyebrows rising slightly as he glanced at Levi, as if to say, "Well?" And honestly, I didn't hate the idea. I stood up and walked over to where Levi was sitting between Cam and Warren on the couch, picking my way carefully through the plates and glasses and cutlery. I bent down on one knee in front of Levi, ignoring Lee snickering, and picked up one of his hands in both of mine. putting on my most serious expression. Levi Monroe, will you do me the honor of being my date to the dance? Oh my, he drawled in a high-pitched Southern accent. Golly gee, ma'am, I'd just love to. I raised my eyebrows. Don't humiliate me here. I'm trying to be cute. So am I. I rolled my eyes and Levi laughed. Sure, Elle, I'll go to the dance with you. I fake swooned backward and lost my balance, falling into some egg fried rice.